live stream up and running with YouTube. And it appears that we are set. Welcome. I am very happy that you're all able to either join in this evening as either part of the Zoom opportunity where you can chat in your questions, or perhaps through the live stream. And of course, for those of you who are joining us later, I'm really glad you're here. I really do look forward to these monthly opportunities where we have a chance to take a look at the various questions that I receive that are certainly arising from within your life, and see how I can support you with the crystal and gemstone healing that you're working with for your own personal well-being, as well as perhaps working with others, because some of you I know are healing practitioners. For those of you who are new to my work, my name is Mary Jo Feely. I am the owner of Fourth Dimension Healing in Stillwater, Minnesota, which is my Reiki and energy healing and crystal healing practice. And I'm also the director of the Center for Crystal and Healing Studies, which is my online school. Now, my online school consists of a number of different courses in energy healing, Usui Reiki, crystal healing, as well as a crystal healer certification program. And you can certainly take a look at the links below this video. I do also offer several free mini courses to kind of get you perhaps interested in exploring healing in general and seeing if there might be a particular avenue or topic that you are finding more interest in. So take a look at the links below after this video and see if you have any questions. I'm happy to ask or answer them for you. So you have been asking questions, and that's what this monthly live crystal Q&A is all about. And so I am going to go ahead and start with our first question. I did not have any leftover questions from last month, nor did I have any inquiries regarding clarification of what I talked about. So if you are coming into my most recent recording, my most recent live cast from January, and you have questions, you can always reach out to me. So this first question is one that I actually have not really been asked before, and it helped me to stop and back up and give some thought to it. So the question came in: can you talk about your very beginnings with using gemstones? What was the very first circumstances that got your attention regarding this, and how it grew from there? Well, that caused me to stop for a minute and really think, because I've been working with gemstones and crystals for quite a long time, and I had to really kind of back up and do some looking. And because I am a proponent of working with gemstones and journaling the work you do with them, that helped me to be able to kind of go back and see when I started working with stones. And what I landed on is my first experience was working in an advanced energy healing class. And the instructor was talking about 3 stones that were very important for establishing a strong connection with the earth, because the earth is so important to us. We're made of the earth, right? And if you are familiar with any of my work, I do follow a system of elements of earth, fire, water, wind, and storm. And so this was actually way before I became familiar with this particular system that I work with. And it really brought back the importance of, as an energy healer, my ability to connect with the energetics of the earth and to be able to hold and maintain those frequencies, not only for my own personal well-being, for my own ability to do healing, but also as a healing practitioner. And there were 3 stones that were introduced at this course. And the first one, and I have talked about it before, but I've never talked about these 3 stones that I was introduced to in quite this way. So the first stone is ruby. Now, ruby is corundum. Anytime corundum is red, it's going to be ruby. Anytime corundum is any other color, such as blue or yellow, it will be known as a sapphire. Ruby is a very heavy stone, very much associated with the earth and very much associated with that vital life force that the earth has brewing within the very core and that we can energetically connect in with. And when we're thinking about working with crystals and gemstones for healing, we're working with them specifically to help our energy field and our physical body rebalance. That means the energetics within our energy field, the energy pathways or meridians, the energy centers or the chakras going up and down our spinal column, as well as in every joint, we have all these little chakras. And then also actual biofield, the aura around us. So that's the energetic component that we work with crystal healing. We also work with the actual effect that the properties of the gemstones have at a cellular level, at a molecular level, and at a tissue level. So for example, our bones and teeth have a lot of phosphorus. So it may be that when we're working with a stone that has a lot of phosphorus, we're doing that intentionally. Same with calcium. So if we're working with calcite, which is high in calcium, we may find that particular species of stone, that particular type of stone, very helpful as we're working with the physical reality of a part of our body that is dependent and interconnected with calcium. So ruby was the first stone that I was introduced to. And it was really interesting to me that the instructor talked about the three stones being kind of as a unit. And so the next stone was garnet. Now, my larger, I have a really nice size piece of Almandine Garnet. It is, of course, at my healing practice, and I'm working at my healing studio at a different location. But here is an example of an Almandine Garnet, and garnet comes in various colors, but you can see, I know it's tricky, between the light and my camera, not always focusing. You can see that between both of these stones, we have this deep red color. And that's the vital important piece when it comes to working with this connection with the earth. So working with Almandine Garnet is very helpful for establishing a strong connection with the earth energy and then bringing that up into that first energy center, the root chakra. Now, if you're new to my videos, you may not have heard me talk about this before, but this little hanging I have behind me is actually really helpful when we're talking about the various energy centers and chakras, because it helps us understand that down towards the base of our spine, we have our root chakra, which is going to tend to be a deeper red color. Then we move up, there's literally a rainbow column all the way up our spine, with our second chakra being orange, the third being the solar plexus yellow, the heart chakra being green. You can't see above that, but we have blue and we have indigo and we have violet at the top of that beautiful cloth hanging that represents the various chakras. So these are two of the three stones that I was introduced to. The third is a stone that is called red-capped amethyst. You will find it sometimes marketed as Super 7. It is not Super 7. Super 7 is a form of quartz, a form of amethyst, I would say, that has actually been trademarked, and that mine is not active. So we really want to be mindful of knowing the stone that we have, calling it the appropriate name, and making corrections, for example, if we find that we have a stone that we thought was one thing and now it's another. So red-capped amethyst is amethyst. It also has hematite, which I actually have a piece of hematite here because another question came up that I brought hematite for. Hematite is essentially iron ore. So when we get that heavy iron inside a piece of amethyst, it is going to be very red, red in color, a deep orange red. I don't have a piece with me right now, but if you've seen any of the, actually the name is blanking right now for me, but it is amethyst that comes up from Canada, or comes down from Canada, because I'm in Minnesota in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's very, very, very red and orange, deep orange red color. So these three stones all are important in connecting with the earth. The red-capped amethyst actually also invites that energy to move all the way through all the chakras. So those were the first three stones I ever learned about. And as I worked with them, and by working with them, I meditated with them. I held them during intentional quiet time. I placed them on or around my body. And then I made note of what did I notice. Sometimes I would perhaps keep one of the smaller ones in a pocket. I used to even carry this in a little pouch that I slipped on my belt loop so that I could keep them within my energy field. So early on, those are the first three stones I worked with. Then I started to think about, what is this crystal healing about? Is there something that I can bring to my healing practice, my energy healing practice, my Reiki practice that is new to me? At that point, I went out and intentionally started learning about stones that support the 7 chakras. And I found a chakra balancing set. And I'm pulling them out here, and I'm going to show you what they were. Move that aside. I had a piece of red jasper for the root chakra. You can see that deeper dark color. I had a piece of carnelian. That was for the second chakra. You can see the colors kind of match. I had a piece of yellow jasper for the third chakra. I had a piece of rose quartz for the fourth chakra, which is the heart chakra. I had a piece of sodalite for the throat chakra. I had a piece of amethyst. For the brow chakra. And then I had a piece of clear quartz for the very seventh, the crown chakra. And I would lay down and I would place these near or next to or on top of the various chakras. And I would lay there and I would set the intention that they were going to be supporting me. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab my tea. You might hear a little bit of a scratch in my throat, so bear with me if I do cough. So I would say that the first three stones, working on really connecting with the earth and getting familiar with the fact that the earth has an energy that I am part of. The earth has an energy that I am part of that can be assisted with a deeper connection with stones. That was lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 was find some stones to work with so that I can start learning about the chakras and how to work with the chakras with the gemstones. That's how I started. And then, of course, just like a good book, one good book leads to 2 more, which leads to 2 more. That's what I started noticing with the crystals and stones that I was working with as well. That as I learned about red jasper working with the root chakra, then I started expanding my understanding of the important aspects of the root chakra and how that affects health, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. How did that connect with my energy healing, my Reiki practice? And I started learning more about other stones that could also support the root chakra, and so on with all the stones. So that's how I started. And when I look back, even 20 plus years ago, long before I was even introduced to the ruby, the red-capped amethyst, and the Almandine Garnet, I noticed that I had been starting to collect gemstones and crystals. And as a kid, I used to collect them, but never made any connection with that. So that's how I got started. And, really our culture, I would say in the West, is almost, it's like we're revisiting and reconnecting with working with stone as medicine, because cultures for millennia have worked with gemstones and crystals to support health, whether it was physical health, emotional health, mental health, or spiritual health. Stones have been important in cultures, and we are learning about that. Many wisdom traditions, when we read some of the sacred texts, will describe some of those otherworldly, heavenly visions using the images of crystals. And so there's a way for you to begin to explore crystals, even if you're just starting out. That's wonderful. Trust yourself to spend some time with the stones. And I do have other videos on my channel, and there is one specifically that is about how to work with crystals, because I will say that all the time. Well, you're going to want to work with this crystal. And people will say, but what do you mean? And that's a fair question. So take a look at that video, and that will give you a little bit more guidance as well. Okay? So thank you. Very, very good question. I also received this question. Polished stone has been said to have no healing properties and or diminished properties. Can you enlighten, clarify this information? Well, I really appreciate this question, because there are times when I'm asked this specific question about, well, what's better, polished tumbled stone or one of the rougher or more raw state stones? So taking a look at the very first three stones I was introduced to, Almandine Garnet, red-capped amethyst, ruby. All three of those are rough or raw. They are in their natural state. And then when we take a look at some of my original stones, all but the clear quartz are tumbled. And I really like working with tumbled stones. Now, I want to show you some examples of both raw and tumbled stones. And I will tell you that anything I say, take, and not with a grain of salt, but anything I say, take it under advisement, take it under your own personal experience, and allow yourself to see what you notice about the stones. So here are two pieces of pyrite. We often think of pyrite as fool's gold. Very kind of cubical, clunky, rough, very common. And then here is an example of that, a piece of pyrite that's been polished. Now, it's never going to be able to be super, super shiny and round and smooth like this carnelian, because of the nature of its structure. It's very cubic. It's isometric in structure, which means all the molecules end up kind of creating little squares. And so that's why you might often find a piece of tumbled pyrite that's still going to have the little pockets where the rough shows through. So when you're working with either of these stones, while they're still pyrite, you're going to perhaps notice that there's a little bit of a difference when you're working with them. One of my other videos talks about the shapes that the stones are in and how that may influence healing. So when we have something that's smoothed out like this particular piece of pyrite, it's going to be a softer, radiating, if I can use that word, kind of emanating out energetic flow of the properties of the pyrite. Here, they don't have that roundish, it's more of that kind of jagged raw effect. And when I work with these stones, I tend to find that a stone that, for me, again, this is my experience, my notations, and my own self in my work, that when I'm working with a rough stone or a raw stone, it's as if the effect is more abrupt. If I'm working with a tumbled stone, it's as if it's a little bit softer and kind of eases into the process. So that's my experience, and that is pyrite. Here is a piece of raw fluorite. Fluorite is also a cubic isometric stone. Pyrite is, or rather, fluorite is a stone that supports kind of the mind. It resonates with the wind element, so it's going to have a lot of kind of clarity and releasing, especially in that kind of confused mind that so many of us tend to have throughout the day. Working with a piece of fluorite can be very helpful. Here's a tumbled piece. I work with both kinds. In fact, I love working with tumbled stones. That, in my experience, again, this rough fluorite is going to have a bit more of a bump. That would be an appropriate word perhaps to use. This is going to be a little bit more of a sustained flowing form of the energy flow, the energetic properties of the stones. I work with both for different intentions. Here's a piece of black tourmaline. Black tourmaline is a fabulous stone for clearing. This one is rough. Sometimes you can see almost like striations. Here is tumbled. Both are going to be very grounding. Both are, oh, we have somebody joining us. Let me just get with me. We're just going to let that person come right on in. So we've got the black tourmaline that's striated, the black tourmaline that's tumbled. Both are going to be very earth-related, very grounding, very, very helpful for clearing the energy field of a lot of chaos. So I actually don't have it with me, but I have a black tourmaline bracelet that I often will wear, especially if I'm going to be around a lot of chaos. Some of you perhaps know that I have been in the past a school nurse. Well, that's a pretty busy health office when you're working with 600 little elementary kids. So I often would wear my black tourmaline, helping my energy field to be able to kind of clear out some of the chaos that was just part of that life. Now, black tourmaline also can be really helpful if we want to place it perhaps around our home. And so if we want to place it around our home, what we can do is work with a piece that's raw, because it's very easy to place that perhaps right inside a little dish. In fact, it's kind of hard for you to see, but I have a little dish of sand. But if I were to take this dish of sand and set that tourmaline right in it, that would be a fabulous way to be able to have that kind of chaotic clearing energy going straight up. If I were to do that with a tumbled piece, you can hardly see it. It still works, but it's going to emanate it out a little bit more. So some of it comes down to, what is your intention, right? What is your intention with the work you are doing with this stone? Here are a couple examples of rose quartz. You saw previously another rose quartz that I talked about when I was talking to you about the chakra balancing set that I collected. Here's a beautiful tumbled piece of rose quartz that's really just so loving. It's such a wonderful way to open up to self-compassion and self-nurturing. And if we notice that we're kind of beating ourselves up quite a bit, we can work with rose quartz. And when it's polished, in my experience, it very gently rolls those properties out into the energy field. Here is a piece of rough quartz. It's more likely, in my experience, to be a little bit more abrupt. So if you were to come into see me in my healing practice, I have chunks of rose quartz in various places within the space to be able to help kind of jumpstart some of that self-compassion. The final pieces I wanted to show you when it comes to the question related to tumbled or rough stones is here is a piece of clear quartz. Look at this piece. It's really not very clear, is it? It's not water clear. That's okay. Still silicone dioxide. It's still clear quartz, and it's still very effective. Here is an example of a tumbled piece. You can almost see right through it. So again, my suggestion would be, if you want that really slow and gentle and steady release of the high stormy properties of clear quartz, use a tumbled piece. If you're looking for a bit of a jump start, or you notice this has got a point. Quartz grows in a hexagonal direction. All of those molecules are stacked in such a way so that they're going to grow in a hexagonal structure. Then we can work with that particular point to be able to either direct energy outward or direct energy inward. There is a point on this one also, but we cannot assume that it's that. Maybe, but perhaps it's over here. So when I'm working with tumbled stones, I actually work with a pendulum to help me identify, particularly when it comes to the quartz and the hexagonal structure. I work with a pendulum to help me find where is that termination point. If I have a completely spherical piece of quartz, I need that pendulum or another way to discern that information without looking at it at a microscopic level. Okay, so that's great. All right, here is a great question. I think it's a question we can all relate to, and I'm going to grab just another sip of my tea. So, you know, with all of with COVID, with all the isolation, with the slow shift back into a sense or a state of more normal life, it's been very easy for us to get depleted. We don't have the social interaction that we used to have. We don't have the opportunity perhaps to just get out and do the things we did once prior to the pandemic. And so we are a little slow to move, and especially those of us up here in the Northern Hemisphere where it's winter. And if you're anywhere in the Midwest, as I am, and shoveling out of 12 to 14 inches of snow, we're not going anywhere very fast. All of that can actually feed into sometimes feeling depleted. So this question, it really is a great one to look at. I've been feeling pretty depleted recently. What gemstones would be good for me to use? So if you only have one gemstone, you're not 100% sure what it is, but you feel like you want to work with it, work with that gemstone. It will help you. And I will go a little bit further to tell you about some ideas that I would offer when it comes to working with a stone that can be helpful to kind of resupply your energy field with what it needs. We're going to go back to the chakra column. Excuse me. And we're going to be really predominantly focusing on that first root chakra, because that's the chakra, the energy center that connects with the earth. That's the one that we are going to connect with to draw up some of that vital energy. Because when we're depleted, our energy reserves are down. To kind of revamp our energy, we need to get enough rest. We need to eat well. We need to be very mindful of how we're exerting energy so that we're really allowing our body to regenerate its energy. And we can also work with stones to connect with that earth energy. Certainly some of the stones I've already been talking about, the ruby, the garnet, red jasper, those are great. Any stone that is connected with the earth can be really helpful. Here, for example, is a piece of petrified wood. And some of these tumbled stones are really kind of slippery, so I always want to hold them carefully so I don't drop them. Petrified wood connects with the earth energy in a very gentle way. It's not kind of doing a deep dive and grabbing a lot of deep energy and pulling it up. It's nurturing very slowly. If we take a look at the fact that this used to be a tree, and then it became fossilized and has a bunch of quartz in it now, it can really remind us that healing takes a little while. It's not usually super rapid, and that it is going to take us a little bit of time to restore our energy. So if you are, like me, a person that wants to get over whatever crud we have really quick, working with a piece of petrified wood is a good reminder that it's okay to take a little while. It's all right. So that would be one option. Another option here, just looking what I have here, is a piece of shungite. Shungite is a stone that is very high in carbon and very, very effective at connecting with the electromagnetic field of the earth, helping to clear our own electromagnetic field and get us reconnected with that balance between the earth and our own root chakra. So shungite is a stone that'll be very helpful. Nuamite. Nuamite comes from Greenland. And it is a stone that actually resonates with storm. So it's a black stone, and many stones that are related to the earth element and are really helpful for the root chakra are often going to be black, they're going to be brown, they're going to be red. In this case, the black quality of the nuamite really helps us connect with the earth. And it also has a very high frequency that brings in like a stormy elemental property that's really about transformation. That's why I think it can be really helpful when we're feeling depleted, because we are looking for transformation. We are looking to shift out of a crud that we've had, out of a depleted energy field, that state of kind of running on empty or running on fumes, and be able to shift. And so transformational stones like nuamite can be quite helpful. Hematite, and I showed you that a little bit ago, iron ore, beautiful stone to connect with that deep, deep earth connection. And then this is a piece of pyrite. Now the other pyrite I showed you was from Peru, and this particular piece is from India. It's still pyrite, it's just that it has a little bit different sheen, luster. I'll hold them both together. You can see. This is the Peruvian pyrite that I work with quite a bit, and then sometimes I work with the Indian pyrite. So that's an example of how you can work with stones to support that depleted sense. There's another way you can work with some stones too, and this actually has to do with taking a look at the traditional Chinese medicine organ body clock system, which designates 2-hour segments that move starting at 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., and then the next is 5 to 7, and the next 7 to 9. And it moves all the way around for 24 hours And really it focuses on functions of various body organ systems at various times throughout the day. So these stones I'm going to show you are really important for the kidneys. I'm going to show them to you. I'm going to talk with you about them, and then I'm going to talk with you about how they can be effective. So here, this is actually a layout that I brought from my office so you could see it. It's going to be 2 pieces of hematite and is a piece of tiger's eye. Now, tiger's eye is actually a type of quartz. It has sun and earth energy. Kind of hard to see, I know. Kind of a gold color. And when we, in our Western understanding of kidneys, think of the kidneys are the organs that filter the blood and filter out whatever is no longer needed, and then that in turn becomes the urine that goes to the bladder and then is released. In traditional Chinese medicine, the concept of qi exists within the kidneys. And the qi, there are 2 types of qi. One type of qi is considered or known as ancestral qi. We cannot replace it. We're given a certain amount, and as we live out our lives, it simply begins to deplete. The other part of the qi is able to be replenished through particular foods, through particular activities, through particular ways of living. And it's that qi, that particular kidney qi, that we are working with as we are laying the 2 hematites, the tiger's eye, on our body. And we're laying them right beneath our rib cage with the 2 hematites on either side, and then the tiger's eye right in the center. And it's going to be slightly below the rib cage, above the belly button area, just resting there. So if you're curious to learn more about that, you can certainly go out to my shop and take a look, as I do have a number of sets that have been created that have to do and pertain to the various organ body clock systems. There are a number of different stones that can be used, and then I've identified some stones that I think are affordable, reasonable, and easily accessible, because sometimes the stones that are recommended are just a little bit harder to find. So I hope that gives you an idea of how to work with that depleted kind of out of energy situation. Thank you. All right, so here's a question. How do you use quartz to grid a room? So one of the first things I want you to do is, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at my YouTube video about crystal grids and how to create a crystal grid, you can see that. And through my online school, I also have a free mini course about crystal grids. So if you're really curious about working with grids, that's a great way to start. There are always other ways that you can explore it further, including I have a crystal grid course in my school. So when we're thinking about gridding a room, I'm actually going to pull this little bowl of sand back here. And what I would say we can do with a room is have as many bowls of sand. I would say sand is probably pretty good to use. I wouldn't probably use rice because it is organic, and you might have a spider or a box elder bug or somebody come in and want to start eating your food, or just kind of staying in that space. So that's why I like working with sand. It doesn't have to be any kind of specific sand. So I have sand here. What my recommendation would be is to think about how big is your room. Are you talking about a bedroom? Are you talking about a really large living space? Because that may influence which size of stone you want to work with. And this question is specifically, how do you use quartz to grid a room? So I thought I'd give you an example. So here, for example, is a piece of clear quartz. Some of it's kind of milky, some of it you can almost see through. It's all clear quartz. It is single terminated, which means it's got a point at this end does not. The easiest way for me to describe it is that this particular single terminated quartz grew this way. It would have been attached to another piece of rock known as a matrix, embedded in another rock this way. So this is a single terminated quartz, and it's a great type of quartz to work with when you're gridding a room. You're going to put that right in the center. I'm going to hold my fingers here so it doesn't tip over. So right in the center of the bowl, and you're going to repeat that, I would say 4, ideally 6 times. And the reason I'm saying 6 is it really can be very effective when you take a look at the internal structure of the quartz. I mentioned that as hexagonal earlier, so we know it's got this kind of six-sided, six geometry within it. So if we work with a hexagonal inward structure and we work with 6 quartz, it can be really super effective. So we do one of these. Here would be an example of the next one that you would have in another bowl, and you would repeat that 6 times, and then place it so that you've got perhaps one in each corner of the room and then one across from each other, so that, again, you've got this ability to have these 6 pieces of quartz in somewhat of a structure, okay? So now, I'd also like to offer that here is another piece, smaller. So if I'm going to work with gridding with quartz, it's best, actually with any stone, I would say it is best to have stones that are approximately the same mass. So this would not be as ideal as if you had 2 about this size. So let's say we're going to do this. We're going to put this little guy right in there. I'm going to put my fingers on it so I can tip and show you. And then I'm going to repeat that maybe 4 times. I have a total of 4 of these with me this evening. If that's all I have, that's all I have. That's fine. You can grid a room. I would go as far as to say is you can grid it with 1 stone where you place that stone. So if this is the room or the stone I want to grid and I only have 1, I would say place it someplace within the center of the space, maybe on a table, maybe on a dresser or a desk, and allow it to send its energy up. When we have a grid, I'm looking at the room I'm in with 4 corners, and let's say I have 2 over there, those energies are within about 24 hours going to be able to create a space within this room that's going to hold the energetics of the quartz. So that is how I would grid a room, and that's really what you're doing when you are creating any kind of a grid, is you are taking 2 stones, and it really is very effective if you have quartz with the terminations pointing up, and then allowing the energies of these 2 stones to, and we can't see it, right? It's energetic, to connect with each other as these points radiate the properties out. In my healing space, in my office, I have quartz, just like I showed you, in 6 spaces. And that totally fills my room. Then any other grid I create within that space becomes a secondary grid, which not only might appear tiny, but because it's within this larger grid, it actually has a lot more amplitude. So grids are fascinating. And as one of my students recently said, oh, she's a rock geek. But that's okay. You know what? It's all right for us to pull out our elementary level geometry, start refamiliarizing ourselves with some of these various geometric structures, and then applying those to the stone. Okay? So that, I would say, would be a way to easily create a crystal grid for your room, and then you can add on that as you want. I actually had another question related to a grid that I think I'm just going to answer too, since we're kind of on that, that topic. And the question is, can you please talk a bit more about how to choose the right crystal to use with a crystal grid? And that's always the million-dollar question, because we wonder, well, what's the right crystal? And there is not a right crystal. There may be a crystal that might be more appropriate. And for you, I would say, think about why you're creating the grid, and think about what qualities and properties of the stones are you looking for to support that. So I have a square grid here, and I have templates for these in my online shop that you can download if you're curious and want to be able to start working with those. And then I'm going to take a look at some different stones. Well, I happen to have a pyramid of shungite. And shungite, as I mentioned before, high carbon, very, very effective in clearing the electromagnetic field, brings great stability. So I have a square grid, and I have a very square, geometric shaped piece of shungite. That's a beautiful match. Even though the molecular structure of shungite is not at all cubic, it's okay, because I like working with a square base, working with a square grid, feel there's some solidity to it. So that can be a wonderful way to start a grid. And then it's like, what stones am I going to use next? Well, different options come to mind. Are you looking with this kind of stabilizing grid to get grounded? Maybe you're super depleted, right? You could use hematite. And these are 4 hematite. That stone's been coming up quite a bit tonight. Put them on one in each corner. That's a beautiful grid. You might say, it's not that I'm depleted. I wish I could get more motivated. I wish I could just bring some kind of compassion into my work. Boy, I'm kind of stuck, but it's just right there under the surface. What if you were to consider some malachite? Malachite, high copper, fire, very fiery stone. If we were to place malachite in each of these corners, this brings a different quality, doesn't it? It brings a different sense of what this grid is going to be about. Now watch this. What if I were to take this pyramid and tip it like this? It changes ever so slightly the energetics coming off of the grid. This is what I'm talking about when you get to work with the stones and you get to think about them and learn about them for sure, then trust your inner guidance, trust that instinct. What if we decide that, no, not that I need motivation. What I am trying to do is get really grounded with my ability to be able to express my ideas at work. Because every time I have a good idea, I feel like I'm just a little hesitant to say it out loud. Here's a wonderful stone called chrysocolla. Chrysocolla resonates with the water element. It's about emotional clearing. It's about getting that throat chakra cleared, allowing that expression, whether it's verbally or any other way. And so when we put, let's say, 4 pieces of chrysocolla on this grid, we still have the anchoring aspect of the square grid. We still have the shungite that's grounding this intention and clearing out, up and out, up and out. And then by bringing in the chrysocolla, we have a whole different scent, a whole different flavor, so to speak, of what this grid represents compared to if we were going to be working with a piece of hematite. Did that make sense? So I would say that when it comes to choosing the right crystals for the right grid, think about the template. Do you want square, triangle? Is it going to be a circle? Is it going to be a hexagon? Is it going to be a pentagram? Is it going to be a spiral? What kind of geometry are you drawn to first? Then decide of the stones that you can work with or that you have, what might be most effective. Okay? So that is a great, great question. Another question here. I've been feeling stuck for a while. Is there a crystal that can help me? So it's so interesting, these questions, the way they come up, they kind of feed one into the other. So yes, we have been dealing with some stuckness lately. And here's a person that's writing in saying, they're really stuck. Help, help. What can I do? So there are stones that I believe can be really helpful and kind of shifting out of that stuckness. And of course, I don't know exactly what's stuck with this person, but whenever we're kind of stuck, one of the things we need is a bit of a kind of a gentle nudge, kind of a oomph to get us moving. And that typically, in my experience, is going to come from earth. Earth elemental energies are going to help shift and clear imbalances in any of the other elements. So if we're too weepy and too watery and too emotional, that water gets corrected with earth, gets balanced with earth. If we're hot, if we're mad, if we're functioning, the earth will bring balance back. If we're super spacey, it's like we keep forgetting things, excuse me, keep forgetting things. We just feel real confused or kind of cluttered. Earth getting grounded is going to help us rebalance that kind of wind, okay? When I'm thinking about stuckness, one of the things that I think can be really helpful is working with a stone that resonates with both earth and fire. Because when we're stuck, we need a oomph. The earth can do that. We also need the fire, which will really help things get moving. So I wanted to show you, I brought some examples of stones that could be really helpful. Here is a piece of septarian. And septarian is a concretion stone. It consists of orange calcite, chalcedony, and aragonite. And it represents or is kind of resonates with both the earth and the fire. So that can be a really helpful stone. There are lots of layers involved with a concretion stone, which basically is just formed from prehistoric mud beds and, lake beds and all kinds of minerals all kind of mixed together, and then they harden. So it reminds me that we're also lots of layers. And so if you're stuck, it can help shift and release some of those layers that are holding you back. Another example would be tiger's eye. Here's golden tiger's eye. You can see some of the shimmers. And golden tiger's eye resonates with both earth and fire. So we've got that earth energy brewing and kind of nudging us upward. And we've got that fiery sun energy kind of coming down and meeting at our energy field. And so it can be quite kind of the third one here is what's known as tiger iron. And I want to hold it so I don't drop it. So tiger iron is actually the golden tiger's eye, as well as red jasper. And here's your tiger's eye again. We have tiger's eye, and then we have the red jasper. The hematite might even be in there. Boy, hematite's coming up a lot tonight. And so that tiger iron is even a little bit more of a bump of earth energy. So that would be my recommendation when you think about working with a stone, working with a crystal to be able to help you get unstuck. Now, more than just picking up a piece of tiger iron, putting it in my pocket and hoping for the best. It's about sitting with this stone, meditating with this stone, perhaps journaling after I've talked with the stone and sat with it, so I can learn to perceive the very subtle nuances. Actually, just earlier today, I looked back at some of my crystal journaling that I did many years ago as I was studying crystal healing. And it's just always so profound how when we sit with the stone and sit with ourselves, we do actually get guidance that can be very, very helpful. So that would be my recommendation for that particular question would be look at a stone that's earth and fire. Now, you can always go out to my online shop and filter through the elements, and you may want to filter earth and fire, see what pops up, see if that might be something you actually even have at home already. That would give you an example of that. Of course, you can always send me a chat or an email also, and I would be happy to help you sort out some of what questions you may have arising for that, okay? There is a final stone that actually I was fortunate just recently to return from the Tucson Gem Show, which is a once-a-year big event. And I am going to be sharing more next month, since we didn't get to it, about another stone that resonates with fire and also earth, and that is rhodonite. And so I was actually able to find some nice pieces of rhodonite that I will be putting out on my online shop, and I will make an intentional effort to talk about it next month so that you can learn more about that stone as well. But it's not quite ready to be, it's not on my shop page yet, but it will be within the next few days. So take a look at that. So I hope you found this helpful. This evening, we started with the questions of how I even got involved with crystal healing in the first place and what were some of the first rocks that I was working with. We talked about the differences between the tumbled or polished and the raw or the rough stones and their effectiveness. We talked about how to work with stones if we're feeling depleted. Oh, I do see it. Let's see. Bear with me. I'm working with an old pair of gloves. Do the stones need to be used at the time they relate to the clock in the Chinese medicine? No. Great question. No, they don't. Because I want to be sleeping at 1 and 2 and 3 in the morning. I don't want to be working with liver or lung time, but you can work with them anytime. Brilliant question. Should the grid be placed in the main room in a home or in a room away from the main room? You grid whatever place you want. Some people will grid entryways. I personally find that my entryway is set up that I can't grid it easily without people hurting themselves on the grid or stepping on it. So I don't do that. You could have a small drawing, picture or a diagram of a room that you find not particularly accessible for a grid, and you could grid that drawing. That would work too. How do I know where to place it? I would say, if this is your grid, hold it in your hands, take some deep breaths, be quiet, and start walking around and trust that you will know where to put the grid. Just like any stone, you may think that, oh, this just has to sit by me today, or oh, this has to be over by the kitchen. And you'll get more of a sense of that as you trust that inner guidance that's coming through. Okay. So we have covered a lot. Please let me know if you have any questions that I can clarify either between now and next month, or else I will certainly be looking forward to seeing you next month. And that will be on Wednesday, March 22nd from 6 to 7 p.m. Central Time, and that's in the Northern Hemisphere in Minnesota. I'm hoping that we'll be done with the snow by that point. So anyway, thank you for joining me. Thank you for the questions. I really have enjoyed this, and I very much look forward to continuing to help you learn how to work with crystals and gemstones for healing. For now, I simply wish you many blessings. Be well.